Hi, this is Dee with University of San Diego Career Development Center. Welcome to Alumni Zoom Trips, a series of pre-recorded interviews with USD alumni experts about how to navigate the long-term impact of COVID-19 on our communities and workplaces. The program is co-hosted with the Office of Alumni Relations. Today, I'm delighted to have Sarah Weber joining us from DC. Sarah serves as Senior Advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Economic and Business Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Sarah advises the Assistant Secretary on U.S. foreign policy, strategic planning, international priorities, and private sector engagements. Prior to this role, she's worked in the Office of Development Finance, where she has coordinated the State Department position on multilateral development bank loan proposals in Africa. Sarah has served as a community health advisor in Peace Corps in Malawi and led U.S. government-sponsored programs that empower Malawian women. She holds an MA in International Relations from USD and has experience in local and global development, public speaking, storytelling, project implementation, and capacity building. Sarah, it's wonderful to have you joining us today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
So in the wake of the economic downturn post-COVID-19, can you tell us a little bit about your top focus from a programming standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we're doing is continuing on. Maybe how we're doing it has changed, but we continue to interact with other governments and work in foreign policy on a regular basis. But one of the key things that I've been focusing on is in the field of innovation policy. Next week, we'll have an innovation roundtable that focuses on smart spaces. So how smart spaces can be useful in COVID-19 response and recovery, but meeting with the private sector to see what's currently there, what could be useful in the future. So that's just a little example of what's taking a lot of my time at the moment, but a lot of our work is continuing forward, just with a little bit different lens given the pandemic.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And what are smart spaces?
Smart spaces, I don't know if you've heard of smart cities, but it's just where the connectivity of the area is kind of all communicating with one another. So kind of in the field of Internet of Things. Some of this with the innovation policy, a lot of what we're doing is just learning from the private sector. So they can kind of explain to us, I don't deal with smart spaces. I've not developed any kind of emerging technology, but we want to know from the US private sector what kind of technology is developing and how, as policymakers, do we want to be in the know so that we understand what's coming.
That's helpful to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
How did you know that you wanted to pursue a career in government? And how would you say your USD degree has prepared you for a career in international policy?
Right. So the career in government had caught me a little bit by surprise, but I knew I wanted to go into international development after my undergrad program, and then went into the Masters of International Relations, which really kind of gave a good solid overview, but it really pushed my critical thinking skills. But from there, I did the Peace Corps, which felt personal and professional. It's something I had wanted to do and couldn't really kind of shake the desire to do it. So from Peace Corps, I started to learn and see a lot about international development from a very grassroots standpoint, and started to see the development influence that the United States government could have. So it wasn't really the track I was pursuing, but once Peace Corps kind of opened up the field from the State Department angle, that caught me a little bit by surprise, but I'm very fortunate to have landed there.
And can you describe the sort of the impact of your Peace Corps experience?
I didn't describe the impact on me. No, but I think that I had kind of the cliche Peace Corps experience for what I thought. Like, I lived very rural, no water, no electricity. But the first few months at site, well, you have a few months of training, and then the first few months at site, you're doing community assessment. So you're really just observing and trying to see and ask the community how to solve their problems. You don't go in and just solve the problem. Because you would probably miss the mark. So what the training taught me is the power of observation, and to really learn and to understand from others what problems need to be addressed. But you just learn a lot about humanity, about yourself, about life looks like when it's different and when it's the same, and the people are wonderful. People are people everywhere. But it really instilled in me the desire to observe before act.
Thank you for that. And would you say that that experience has been pivotal in you embarking on careers with government? How impactful has field experience been in entering careers with government?
Yeah, I think that one of the big programs I worked on in Peace Corps was a PEPFAR program, which is a government-funded program to address HIV and AIDS. Mm-hmm. So I think that that opened my eyes to what government program looks like and how to go through some of the process of monitoring and evaluating and how you procure things. And so it was a really good taster. And then my first position at the State Department was in the Office of Development Finance, where we were reviewing multilateral development bank projects for the foreign policy next, then also to make sure that the development banks follow their own social safeguards to make sure that the project is doing what it sets out to do, which is to alleviate poverty. So I think that was a really wonderful transition from the field to then seeing what kind of large scale projects would impact the field. So I think that it was very useful in understanding in a manageable way what government programs and processes look like. Mm-hmm. It's obviously very different when you're working in a field without any computer access and doing things kind of by hand to then drafting memos and briefing. But the beginning, the processes are the same. They're just a little different.
Technically different, but the processes thinking behind it is the same. What would your advice be for our students and new graduates who are interested in breaking into careers with government and State Department specifically?
So to join the Foreign Service, you pursue the Foreign Service track and you take a test, and they're offered several times a year in different parts of the country. And you take that test, and it's a very formalized process. You pass one part of the test, you go on to the next one. People take the test multiple times. You might take it right after undergrad and not pass. And maybe that's just because you need more experience. So then people might pursue graduate school or get a little bit more work experience and take the test again, pass, keep going. So there are several stages that involve like group interviews and then individual interviews until you get placed. And then there's contract work and there's civil service. So I'm a permanent civil service employee, and those tracks are usually through internship programs. So there's pathway interns, there's virtual interns, there's I think a few other internship programs, and then there's fellowships. So the Presidential Management Fellowship, or there's AAAS Fellowship. These are programs that go from like right after graduate school or right after a PhD program to try to recruit subject matter experts into the government to do policy work. There's also USA Jobs, where you can find a posted job for the government online. You apply to it just like you would any number of jobs. I actually got in through the State Department through non-competitive eligibility. So if you do the Peace Corps, after you complete your service, you have 1 year of what they call NCE, non-competitive eligibility. And you have 1 year to kind of fast track into a government job. You get kind of a letter saying that you qualify for this and that your resume can be shown directly to a hiring manager. So, I mean, I think people that want to do international work should consider doing the Peace Corps for the experience alone. But a huge advantage is this non-competitive eligibility, where you can join the government through this channel.
That's very helpful to know. And what has been COVID-19's impact on State Department recruiting and hiring? Has it impacted in any way?
So from my understanding, I actually asked a few people that do direct recruitment and hiring, because I don't, but they said it has not slowed down, that there are a lot of virtual sessions. There's still a lot of recruitment and hiring that's happening. And I will give a little plug to go to careers.state.gov because they can kind of lay out all of those examples that I went through, probably a bit more articulate than I do because it decodes the process. So the State Department's still hiring. We still have plenty of work to do. So I encourage people to look there.
That's very encouraging to know. And what does a State Department senior advisor do? What does a typical day look like for you pre-COVID and post-COVID?
Okay, so the pace is quite fast. A lot of what I do is the strategic thinking for how best to use our principal's time. So that's what we call like our assistant secretary or the higher level folk that you might work for. But a lot of it is just if we have special initiatives, how do we move those initiatives forward? So before COVID, it involved a lot of travel. In 2019, we went to Kansas City, Boston, New York. It gets a little better. Hawaii, Fiji, Australia, Mongolia, Iceland, the Netherlands, London, Paris. So we were moving. We were getting things done.
Year.
That was 1 year. So last year was a big year. Last year was a really big year travel wise. Now we're unable to travel. Some travel is happening, but we haven't traveled. But what we are doing is still meeting with those governments, just virtually like this. You know, we've had to do that transition, that we're still having those conversations, and so less site visits, less face-to-face meetings, but online platforms, secure calls. We're still able, you know, the pandemic. We say sometimes that the pandemic doesn't stop diplomacy, so we're still working just a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. And this is to promote key American economic interests abroad, right? In the place internationally. And what would you say? You mentioned strategic thinking as one, but what are some keys to success in your area?
So I think something that I think it applies to every job that you have is like the key to success is relationships and the power of those relationships. So, I mean, we work really fast and, you know, mistakes will happen, but if you have strong relationships, you cover for one another. If you have strong relationships, you have a rough day, you have a rough project, it's fine because there's a foundation there. So I would just encourage wherever you are at whatever step, like to take time to foster those relationships. If it's difficult news, pick up the phone to deliver that news. If it's a back and forth email exchange that isn't being articulated, I mean, we can't go face to face, but schedule a face to face. So I just think that something that I've been very just encouraged by and inspired by are the relationships that I've been able to develop at work. But when I look back, also in the Peace Corps, also at USD, but I think that really allows you to work together, to collaborate, corroborate, and really move forward. But I would also go back to strategic thinking. And then I think it's just really important to be humble in your approach.
Sure. What would you say are some of the challenging aspects of your role or careers in this, in this area?
Yeah. I think that the pace can be difficult. I mean, I rattled off a lot of countries. That was a lot of travel. The pace is exciting and kind of what keeps it going, but I think it's important to carve out some time to make sure that you're hitting reset and that you're resting and reflecting and able to keep that pace. Because I think I still see myself as early in my career, and I want to make sure that I'm working at a sustainable pace. It's exciting, but it's sometimes long days.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about the career growth opportunities within your division?
So yeah, I think that something that we have, I think the civil service, one of the wonderful things about the State Department is we have the Foreign Service Institute, which is basically a university-like campus that offers training on all kinds of topics. They offer language training for foreign service officers that are going to go out to an embassy and require language skill development. So that could be a year-long language training stint. But they have day-long skill set trainings. They have week-long negotiation courses. That one was very fun. It was very interesting. So I think that some of just the training opportunities that are part of the workflow just allow you to continually grow your skill set so that you're able to kind of keep moving upward.
That's very helpful. Thank you. And what would your top 3 advice be for students and alumni who are preparing for a job interview with the State Department?
Yeah, well, congratulations if you get there. But I would say that one, learn about the office that you're here for, but also who will be conducting the interview. The more you know, like the more you can kind of go in there and try to answer what questions you might think they will ask. I'd say it's really provide examples of past work, to provide tangible or examples of what that is. And I think that more than anything, if you interview, you need to be yourself. Like, you need to make sure that it's a good fit for you too, that it sets a good foundation for the next several jobs. So be you, try not to be nervous, but be the best version of you, but be you.
I love that. Be authentic and make sure that you've researched the organization.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. And you mentioned before that you're now working virtually predominantly. What are some helpful best practices or tips that you can provide for working remotely?
Yeah, I think that what has helped the days that I work remotely to still have some scheduled check-ins, even if it's a virtual coffee. I think what has been interesting about working remotely is if it's project-based work, I find that the days move very, very quickly, but you don't want to end the day that you didn't interact enough with other people. So making sure that, we are all in this together. So setting up even if it's a 15-minute check-in with someone that you haven't heard from a while, to make sure that those relationships are still being sustained during this time. That's been like something that I've noticed the days that I work from home. If I have some check-ins a little bit, just like you would when you're passing each other in the hallway and you have an impromptu conversation. It doesn't have to always be formal, or it could be a quick work-related question and then a couple minutes of just seeing how we all are doing.
Sure. Earlier today, I was at an event, and one of the questions that was asked was, can you tell us something that only happens at Wharton and nowhere else? And they were trying to sort of get at the culture of the college. So I want to sort of, throw it back to you to say, what is something that would only happen in the State Department and nowhere else? Just to have a sense of the work culture there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it happens where it's a little question, but fun. I mean, there's still humor there. There's still laughter and inside jokes. And I don't know why I had this idea that like the State Department wasn't going to involve like long form jokes and ongoing jokes. So that's been like the thing, it's hard work. It's a lot of work, but it's also fun. And people have a good sense of humor. So.
Okay, well, that's really refreshing to know. So thank you so much for that. And then lastly, what's something that you've learned later in life, but you knew a little bit earlier?
I think that that's a tricky one, because I try to apply it, but I think I wished it would have been helpful earlier in life to understand the value of establishing boundaries. One, like saying no can be something in work and outside of work that is okay. And to not take on too much, to not take on more than you ought to. So I think boundary setting allows you to go further, go longer. But I think I earlier was maybe a little bit too, timid to not establish boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for this lovely conversation.
Thank you.
Continue to keep in touch with us, and we greatly appreciate your time and insights today. So thank you.
Thank you.